time.
Okay, I'm good. I'm open to what the group wants to do. I'm not wanting to silence anybody. I just.
You want a big one or a little one? Okay, you're getting.
Perfect.
Tyrone,
What's the hope the mayor's gonna do that?
did you see my letter? Are you willing to sign off on that letter?
I did not see it.
Okay. I emailed a letter out, in response to the
Weird.
Floyd situation.
Okay.
The only ones I've heard from are you and.
Yeah.
Both can see this?
Michael. So.
Everybody else good with it?
Yeah, no,
I know
I-
I'll be good then. Good.
T-shirts ain't going there.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Nobody's wearing ties, bro.
Better let your whistle
saying.
You might need some water.
Well, I've got flip-flops and a ball cap on. I figured if you-
I have my hat on today too. I was just gonna take it off for the meeting.
Okay, folks, it's 4 o'clock and I think our show is live now. Why don't we go ahead? This is it's a special meeting, but it's for a briefing and for a short closed session, hopefully short closed session, for a legal matter and a possible land acquisition. So not personnel this time. So, so at any rate, we'll go ahead and begin with we have with us the Chief of Police, Ken Shultz, who's going to give us an update on crime in the city, and I'm sure probably some discussion of what's happened in the last couple of days. So, Chief, we'll turn it over to you.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate it. We last spoke as a group. I brought my executive staff over on January the 6th. It's like it seems like that was years ago that we were up here talking about specifically operations, personnel, crime statistics, and the high point. So since it has been so long, and specifically in light of the current crisis that our country is seeing as a result of the tragic death of George Floyd on the custody of the Minneapolis police officers, I think I want to go back and touch on a couple of those things that I presented during that January briefing, which specifically gets a little bit more into the training side of it and some of our personnel aspects of the police department, because I think it's worth re-emphasizing that. And I'll tell you, as I previously noted in public, we understand that the actions of those officers appear to be without merit, justification, and they displayed an absence of the basic sense of compassion for the individual. So we are all watching for the application of justice in this particular case as well. Prior to the current focus that we're dealing with right now, and then our 3 months of pandemic, I understand that we had an inquiry, want to know what the statistics, crime statistics look like here in High Point. And as the council, I appreciate your interest and understand your concern, because it seems like we're constantly still seeing violence and crime reported in the media and in the news on a regular basis. And sometimes it's hard to track. I do my best to look at it, and every now and then I keep seeing something. I have a tally going, and I think that the number is ridiculous, but they keep repeating stories over and over again. So I want to take the opportunity to specifically put our statistics through June 1st today out for you. And I'll tell you, while I'm covering this as the first part of my presentation, I really hope you remember it, because these statistics say a lot about the effort, about the commitment, and about the effectiveness of our officers and of our partners. And by partners, I'm talking about our groups like the Family Justice Center, High Point CAD, the District Attorney's Office. You're going to see a lot about federal law enforcement partners and the U.S. Attorney's Office. And I would hate for those statistics in the work that we've done through this part of the year to be missed. But so please take notes. This is included in the Dropbox.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, but
I can.
Okay.
I can't hear anything else.
Yeah. I'm texting Jerron now.
Yeah, I can't hear anything else.
Jerron, we're frozen and we can only hear outside people that are connected remotely. We can't hear the room. I think they're checking on it.
Okay.
Somebody's there.
Yeah, John says they're rebooting.
Okay.
Okay.
I can hear it.
You have everybody? Joanne, Vic, the years, Vic?
Yeah, can now.
I think we're back on now.
Yeah.
Did, present anything? Okay,
I mean, we heard you, but I didn't see you first.
okay, so you heard
I heard some, your intro, where you're standing right here.
the, okay.
Go ahead and share that. It's going to.
And I can't find my eyelid, just like.
Your other. That's why.
Have you shared the screen already?
Yeah, it's got the red ring around it, so that's what everybody can see.
Okay.
I wasn't making no noise.
Okay, I'll continue if everybody can hear me now. And again, let me sum up with those last couple of points. I'm putting this out first is our statistics on the crime in High Point. And I really don't want you guys to forget about what these numbers are saying, because it really emphasizes the work, the dedication, the commitment of our officers and our partners as we're moving forward. And I'll tell you right now, what you're going to see here isn't common throughout the state or the country right now.
Maybe you just like the screen. Someone's like the screen. What did you,
Here's a,
Activity. All right, so, you know, we track property crimes and persons crimes. We have a couple of key things. Obviously, impact crimes are going to be homicide, manslaughter, rape, robbery, aggravated assault. Right now, key things I want you to look at is we've had 11% reduction since last year. You want to talk homicides? We've unfortunately had 2 for the year, but this time last year we had 8. We got a 75% reduction in homicides, manslaughters. We've had none, whereas last year this time we had 2. We've had major reductions all the way down to include, you know, aggravated assaults with a 24% decrease. So I think those are some critical numbers to look at. I think that's what's making an impact. This is where last year, every time you saw the media, we were involved in some of the news stories with some of the violence that is happening in High Point. And right now, again, we are standing good as far as the violence goes. And what I'll attribute that to, again, is the right statistics, utilizing the right data, utilizing the right techniques, and focusing on the correct people. I'll get more into it as we move along. One point I do want to make, though, aggravated assaults by the NIVERS tracking system. While it says we've had 75 versus 99 last year, that's not 75 people that have been hit with gunshots. Anytime guns are fired, some of our drive-bys into a house, into a car, those count as aggravated assault, even though nobody's hit. So we consistently count that. That's how everybody should be counting that with the new NIVERS programming. But at the same time, again, a 24% decrease in that. Robberies are a little bit unusual. We have had an uptick. These generally start off at the first of the year. You can see the statistics down there. Reality is last year, we had way fewer robberies than we normally had. Right now, we're still 10 robberies fewer than our 5-year average is what numbers that we're looking at right now. So we've made 29 arrests out of them. Several of these arrests were made in conjunction with some of our local agencies. We've had groups of people that were moving to the Piedmont and even beyond, had a couple of chain restaurants and some various businesses that were hit. It's kind of interesting. We've had at least 3 inside jobs where a clerk or somebody that was inside one of the businesses was involved in those robberies. And the last thing I'll point out is that we're currently having a big trend of people meeting through the use of social media apps for either illicit purposes or to sell an item, and they're turning into robberies. And Sometimes we get the right story on that, sometimes we don't, and we have to work through that to figure out specifically what's happening on that. But we're actually having some pretty good success on tracking these individuals back and making charges as them as well. But again, this is the facts, and this is very much unlike what we're seeing around the state, around the country right now. It's not the trend. The trend is the violence is going back up again. Property crimes related.
Over. Couldn't get you.
We focus on burglaries, auto thefts, larcenies from autos, and shoplifting. You can see another 10% decrease. All the red numbers are negative numbers that we're having. 2020 compared to 2019, same time last year. Right now, we continue to see the larcenies from autos as our biggest problem. It's a regional issue. A couple things that we've done to address that is we're working closely with Guilford County, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. We're putting together lookouts. We're doing hot sheets on all the stolen cars that are happening and moving from there. You can see we've had numerous weapons stolen from some of these cars. A lot of times our cars are actually having the keys left in them, and they're being taken and utilized in other types of crimes as well. So unlocked cars is the problem. So 40 firearms stolen from them over the year just here in High Point, and over $170,000. If you're following us on our social media, you'll keep seeing lock your doors, reminders going out. Please keep pushing that. If people lock it, if they take their valuables in, obviously that's a good thing. If they lock their doors, we got groups of people that just go through neighborhoods checking doors. Good thing is the Ring doorbell cameras and all the security footage is capturing them all. And it's great whenever they go up and it's locked and they keep going. Unfortunately, though, that's not always the case. And for some reason, people continue to leave their keys. I don't know if it's key fobs or the keys in the car. It's so convenient to leave them in the car. These guys push the start button, they fire up, they take them out. And a lot of times we're seeing those in shootings and burglaries and other types of crimes as well. Sticking with the violence theme, we continue to track really basically two major gang groups within the city. One of them has over 22 validated gang members. Validation is using state law requirements for verification of their involvement in that gang. There's a list of criteria that you got to go through to become validated. Associates are people that haven't been validated based on that particular number of incidents, events, indicators that are involved in that, but they hang out with those folks. And then a second group has 11 validated, 12 associates. These two groups, we're just calling them Group A and B because I don't want to give anybody notoriety over this. They're continuously involved in the beast, back and forth. You can see the listing of it. A lot of it's social media. You're asking about social media posts earlier. A lot of our violence is driven by stuff that people post on social media. And again, I've heard it's as simple as going over to another city and taking a picture in front of a street sign. Next thing you know, we got people having to go over there to shoot them up. So the typical stuff as far as that goes. Unusual changes now that we've seen over the past years is a change in that gang dynamic. They're not always a whatever member for life. They're transitioning back and forth between gangs. Even if you were initially linked with them at one time, next thing you know, you might be beefing with them, robbing them, shooting at them as well. So again, our intel is giving us the opportunity to get inside, track these guys, track the individuals that are involved in this, and really hold them accountable. And that's why those previous two slides ago, where the purchase crimes are dropping, is why we're having such success there. These are just a couple examples, and one of them has been sentenced, so his name's up there. The others haven't been sentenced, but they are pending federal indictments right now. It's being postponed, as most of our stuff is, due to the COVID-19 situation. But the three individuals listed on the screen here are major drivers of violence in High Point. Not one incident, but multiple incidents that we've constantly had them involved in. We're able to make charges. We're able to get them involved with our federal law enforcement officers. We've got federal indictments, and now we're able to get them off the streets For 11 and a half years, the first guy there is going to be off the streets. And again, so many of our incidents over the past couple of years have been linked to these individuals as well. You see, another critical point that I want you to point out, to take note of, though, is that these guys were all called in. We identified them early on. First guy was identified back in 2011. We brought him in, and as a city, gave him the message that the violence he was doing was wrong. He had to stop that, or we would hold him accountable to protect the city. Obviously, he's offered support and community efforts to try changing that lifestyle, to give him an opportunity to move forward. He didn't take it. So from 2011, he proceeded all the way up to 2019. Now he's gone for 11 and a half years. These other two gentlemen, 2017, received that same notification. We know what you're involved in. We know what you're doing. If you don't stop it, we're going to hold you accountable for that as severely as possible. Right now, we're pending and we're expecting some pretty good time off of these weapons and drug charges as well. And the second guy was also notified in 2015. What that tells me is our focused deterrence work is still identifying the right people that are driving the crime in High Point. And that's critical. You can't go out here and treat everybody the same. You can't go out here and use a blanket approach to anybody that we see or encounter out in the neighborhoods. But we've got to use intelligence to identify who the people are and target them specifically. That's how we can continue to have positive relationships with our community. That's how we can continue to keep our community safe. Guns, obviously a continuous theme that we're working on to address the gun violence. You can see the trend from 2016 to last year. You can see that we've increased 86% in the seizures of illegal guns. Either illegal because the person in possession of them is not supposed to have them by law, or because they're used in illegal activity, like the robberies, the assaults, the drug-related issues. So we continue to grow. Right now we're on track to have 425, which is obviously a major growth even from last year. And that is still with the reduction in calls for service, the reduction in the community out circulating freely because of this pandemic situation. Each one of these guns that we're collecting gives us evidence that we're able to utilize. We're taking advantage of it through tracing information so that we can see where that gun was purchased. We try identifying people backwards through that, see where our guns are coming from, the sources, or where the violence is taking place at. We're also using them to compare the shell casings now. And part of my efforts over this upcoming year is to continue to develop our own abilities to more quickly check those things so that we can identify that that gun was fired at this location, and this location. And then whenever we pick it off an individual, we're able to go back and build a charge and address those increase in aggravated assaults, again, where buildings and houses and cars are getting shot up, and make charges against that. So this continues to be part of the diligence that we use to stop the violence within our city. Narcotics, I'll tell you that opioids continue to remain a significant, impactful problem for us in our city right now. Heroin, fentanyl is still out there. This past 3 months, we've seen increases in overdoses, and I'm starting to see increases in deaths as well. So it's really a challenging time period. You understand our officers have been out there working this whole time. At the same time, everybody's told to social distance and protect yourself. Now they're out here trying to use Narcan to first aid procedure to revive these individuals that have overdosed on these the opioids and the heroin issues here. So ongoing problem. Obviously, what we got to do is work on the education side. We got to work on the treatment side, and we got to do the enforcement. My vice unit's primary focus remains heroin. That's their efforts right now. Names you see up here on the board right now, both these guys have been involved majorly in drug activity and other issues. You can see some of the involvements that we have some connections to as far as homicides and violence. We've been able to get federal cases against them. And again, these are things that with our federal law enforcement partners and the U.S. Attorney's Office, we're able to put together these cases and get successful prosecutions, which are getting these individuals off the street. And I'll tell you, it's interesting with the second one there, where he was involved actively making threats about killing High Point police officers. So we had to be proactive. We're able to do so, and he went to jail. We let the criminal justice system handle him. He's out here making threats to kill police officers. We're able to build solid cases against him and utilize the criminal justice system to address that. I'll leave it at that for it. But interesting, over the last 6 weeks, again, pandemic timeframe here, you can see that we've had 4 search warrants executed where we had 13 firearms that were seized out of those 4 search warrants. The guns, the drugs, the violence, all goes together. It's all constantly linked. You see a little snapshot of what COVID-19 has done to us as far as calls for service and crime-related data. Thing I want to point out is last year at this time, we answered 26,527 calls for service. It's 26,000 contacts with other citizens here within the city of High Point. 26,000 plus times that we've gone out and interacted with them and had to dress up. This year, because of the pandemic, we've seen so many businesses not operating. We've seen people staying at home. We've seen the just that whole difference in the amount of people out in the community. We've got a 25% call reduction in calls for service. Now that reduction is 2 things. It's people calling in, but it's also proactive activity by the police officers as well. And if you think about it, I don't have my traffic stop numbers on here, but if there's no cars on the street, we're not out there doing traffic enforcement. So all that type of stuff has plummeted, resulting in that 25% decrease. The thing that we do have concern on, again, remains our domestic situations, domestic violence, and what we're talking here is families, brothers, sisters, brothers, parents, grandparents, however that works. And then the second one, great concern to us is the intimate partner violence, the husband and wife type of relationship, the similar relationship with the intimate partners. We continue to see issues with that, and so that's why we've had to work so closely with our the Family Justice Center partners to ensure that those services remain available. And I'll go ahead and say right now that even at their detriment on occasion, because again, the safe thing to do is stay home and don't expose yourself, but we've got a 60% increase in people that need support and that need help from us. So they've been very active. We continue to have our special victims unit that works at the Family Justice Center that's really focusing on trying to keep those cases from becoming serious or potentially turning into homicides that we've seen in the past. So you can see the rest of the numbers, the robberies again from the first of the year, larcenies from autos, those things continue. Again, please, anytime you're in a community meeting, ask them to lock their doors, take their valuables out for us. Try being brief on our statistics. They're very good. I don't know if you guys were expecting those numbers specifically, because again, every time I open up the paper, I'm seeing a homicide or a shooting. And I want you to know where we stand right now. Obviously, papers are regional. The media, the news organizations are regional. So we're seeing a lot of data. I challenge you to look at the data of our other jurisdictions around us. Expand out throughout North Carolina, expand out throughout the country, and see what's happening right now with their violence levels as well. You're going to see similar call for service decreases. You're going to see similar increases in domestic violence, but some of the violent crimes, they are starting to skyrocket from what I'm seeing in the statistics I reviewed. All right, any questions from you guys as far as those statistics, the data on our crime? Yes, sir.
Just one. For the gang A and gang B, where you have your validated members and associates, I'm assuming those numbers are adjusted if someone ends up committing a crime and being indicted and convicted for it, and I'm assuming they're no longer counting tallies, right? Or do you?
That's a snapshot of where we are today.
Right,
whenever we present this. So those are the people we're focused on right now. Okay, with that, and again, please go back and review those statistics, look at your slides. I'd like to use the rest of my time to transition into some something related to our current situation, the issues with the Minnesota and tragedy and justice that's taken place up there. Really, this is, we're talking about the idea of police reform. And I want to go back, we touched on a lot of this back in January. I want to refresh that. I pulled in a couple other slides. I pulled in some more details. I want to make sure that you guys are able to educate the public about the operations of law enforcement in North Carolina for a start, and then specifically for High Point. I think the title of this is pretty telling. We're talking about fair and impartial policing in North Carolina. You're going to see the Justice Academy and Training and Standards. I don't think a lot of people realize High Point Police Department doesn't make up all the rules for the High Point Police Department. If we did that, we have hundreds of agencies around. Nobody would be consistent. Nobody would have the same standards. North Carolina is very progressive in our standards and the requirements for both being a police officer and maintaining that training to continue to be a police officer. There's been a big push, and again, that push is labeled under that fair and impartial policing. That's what we all want. I think that's what our community demands of us, and that's what we demand of ourselves, is to be consistent and fair across the board. I'm throwing this up. This is a slide of specifically High Point, because one of the things, I think one of the fears that's out there is that there's this blue wall that's constantly protecting law enforcement officers from repercussion, from punishment, from being addressed. And I want to disprove that with this slide. These are the years that I've been police chief here in High Point. This is disciplinary action that's taken place from our officers. You can look at it in total. I've had 53 different types of action. Some of it is because they crashed the police car. Maybe they hit the mobile toter while looking at their computer and hit it. Sometimes it's for policy violation. Sometimes it's for performance issues. Now, I can't go into details about them, obviously, because of the personnel law, but go through and note. Reprimands, that's a formal written documentation that's telling them what they did wrong. Training is obviously incorporated into it. Suspensions, we've had 11, for a total of 23 days since I've been chief. If you skip all the way to the bottom of it, I've fired 11 individuals. Some of them for the policy violations. Some of them were people that were brought on to be police officers, but they didn't have what it took for them to be High Point police officers. They didn't have what the city expected of them, in my opinion. So 11 of those individuals, since I've been chief since 2016, have been terminated. So please help me again, share that information. Everybody protects their own to an extent. We're always looking out for each other, but we also have a higher calling that we're responsible for, and we hold each other accountable. We, so many times, and over the years, you know, I've been here for almost 31 years now. I've got story after story about officers who are reporting other officers for criminal violations, for violations of policy, because they know that impacts them personally. It impacts us. The patch that I wear came along a long time before I got here, and we hope it's going to be here a long time after I am. And we've all got a responsibility to continue to build upon that. So I just want to touch on that real briefly. Next thing is I'll talk a little bit about the structure of how that training goes. So I told you, High Point Police Department doesn't dictate our police standards. We write policies, we do procedures and SOPs, but for the training and standards, it actually, the people that decide the training requirements and the mandates and the hiring process for a law enforcement agency is composed of 24 members of the Criminal Justice Training and Standards Commission. And you can see the group of different organizations where they come from. School of Government, Secretary of Public Safety, North Carolina Attorney General, Governor Appointees, Criminal Justice Associations, North Carolina Chiefs of Police Associations, of which I'm a member, has representation on there. These professionals get together, identify the current problems and trends, and then dictate policy for all the police departments throughout North Carolina. I'll tell you, there is a sheriff's training and standards, which is different. A lot of times they really mirror each other, but there's two different standards. So this is what governs the police department. I think it's pretty telling to look at their mission and their vision statements as well. We're looking to get criminal justice officers who are competent and ethical in the conduct of their duties. That's coming from the 34 members of the Criminal Justice Training and Standards Commission. So from there, we're pushing out policy to try to achieve that. We want to be effective and ethical while we're out here protecting our citizens. A lot of what we're dealing with right now, some of the policies that have been implemented, some of the training programs that have recently been pulled together and mandated, came from President Obama's task force on 21st century policing. So he got former Chief Ronald Davis, who's Oakland amongst other places. He served in Oakland, California for many years. He was the executive director of this task force. You can see, again, it's comprised of law enforcement, community members, executive leaders, academia, activists, community and civil rights leaders. They came together and under the appointment of Eric Holder here to come up with a guideline for 21st century policing. Back to the fair and impartial. This is the gist of what the key points that we pulled out of the 21st century policing mandate that was pushed down from the presidential committee, looking at fair and impartial policing, looking at implicit bias, crisis intervention techniques, and de-escalation techniques. Those are the things that we specifically want to focus on. Fair and impartial policing, this is where we're getting into the science of bias. It's not saying that officers are all racist. It's saying that there's implicit bias that happens to an individual. And it's not necessarily a negative thing or a cultural whatever, but it's a science that can cause negative perceptions or unrealized perceptions. I'll tell you, the city just mandated bias training across the board as well through our LMS training. So I just sat through that. This covers a wide range of different types of bias, whether it's racial, age, discriminatory, sex, numerous types of things. And you can see examples of this all the time. I've seen little pictures where someone talks about it, pick out the astrophysicist here, whatever, and there's a picture there. Now, obviously it's this guy, and it's this woman. Why'd you pick the guy type situation? So those are the types of bias that are implicit, that are unconscious, that we've got to learn how to address and to get under so that our officers that learn how they view things, learn how they make decisions, and move from there. Crisis intervention training is another situation where we're constantly involving ourselves in situations where we're being called to situations involving people with mental illness. That's a large majority of the types of critical calls that we go to. You can't just talk, you can't do regular policing in a very unique and unusual situation. We've really got to work through that. So we've got up with health providers and medical support personnel, doctors and professionals to figure out, and we present. We've actually, this is a 40-hour block of training we've got to send our officers to. So we're trying to get all of our officers put through there to try addressing those critical situations that have a tendency to escalate fast and allow us to figure out how to get in there and talk them back down. Lastly, the de-escalation that I just said is a major focus. Officers are trained to react to what the circumstances are given. It's tough. You guys, I know everyone's been startled or scared or frightened or excited, and it's hard to switch gears immediately. We understand that, but we also understand that if we're in a situation where we're fighting one guy for 1 second, and we've got him subdued or he surrenders a second, we've got to shift gears. It's not natural, it's hard to do, but that's where the de-escalation training comes in. And that's what we constantly work through de-escalation, through the use of force tactics training that we put on as well. Other aspects of the 21st century policing, you can see several different things there as well. The building community trust, a large pillar, a large aspect of the training that's mandated out to North Carolina officers is focused on that. Again, policy, we've got to make sure we have the right policies in place so that We're making sure the message is right, the guidelines are out there, and then we can hold officers accountable for that. Utilizing technology without being invasive. That's a challenge right now. There's all sorts of technology out there. You guys all have phones. You guys are being exposed to technology on a regular basis right now. And we've got to figure out how we can use technology to help us keep the community safe while not infringing upon people's rights. Crime reduction, ongoing training, officer wellness, these are all things that have been pulled from Obama's 21st century policing platforms. This is still similarly related, but again, some of the concepts where the training continues to focus, that Criminal Justice Standards Commission continues to blast out the training requirements for the community policing and problem solving. And again, think about it. I'm sure some of you have sent me complaints about speeders on the street or a drug house. We go out there, we write a ticket. We go out there, we do a knock and talk. Guess what? You call us back because, hey, there's another speed around here, or there still has drug activity there. We got to be smarter as law enforcement officers about trying to figure out how to get to the bottom of this. Examples, we bought the radar silence that we can set out there that actually tracks people's speeds. It lets us know what the times are that they're out there. It lets us work with traffic engineering to make adjustments. I send letters to landlords and property owners of some of these houses. That's not in policing 101. If you got a drug complaint, you got to deal with the drug complaint. We follow up and we let the homeowner know that this house is involved in activities that's impacting our community. We need you to be aware of it and hold these people accountable, or else us and our community members are going to do so. So that's the type of stuff that we're looking at. We're going through there. Communication continues to have a major focal point, and it is involved in everything from use of force to de-escalation to community relations. You got to be able to communicate, and communications means listening, hearing, and also speaking and getting your points across. We talked about the bias awareness. We continue to do so much in scenario-based training. That's one thing I pride the Huntsville Police Department about, is we're out there being proactive, simunitions. They're paint pellet guns that replicate our guns, but you can use them against each other. They're painful. They leave welts on you, but they're very good at teaching tactics and training, because if you did it wrong, you can always stop and go over and redo it again. Out here on the streets, that might not happen. So we can do shoot, don't shoot scenarios. We can do search techniques to make sure they're checking people properly. A lot of different things that we can do through the scenario-based training. Again, the experience is something you get shortly after you need it. I prefer the t-shirt, been there, done that. And by going through the scenario-based training, if we can do this in a controlled environment, when the officers encounter this on the street, they're able to go back and say, I've been here, I've practiced this, I know what to do, I know what the challenges are. If it's a vehicle pursuit, I know I get tunnel vision, I know I've got to look around, I know I've got to communicate on the radio, so that we can have them prepared for the high-risk situations that are just quickly escalating out there on the streets for us. Dealing with trauma and victims and mental health issues, again, being smart and trying to figure out how we can identify what's driving the problems, so that we can actually make impactful changes that drives down the crime within our city. This is an example, next couple of slides, of some of our recent training that we've gone through, pushed down from the state. So I've highlighted the key points in blue. Strategies to improve law enforcement interaction and relationships with minority youth. I know I was a juvenile at one time. I don't have kids. I understand that it's challenging to deal with kids. Police officers, guess what? We're challenged dealing with kids. We've got to learn out there. We got to understand what the external factors are that's influencing their decision making. Why are they acting like that in front of us? What is driving them to do this? Is this a complete show of disrespect for us? Are they trying to fight us? Are they trying to impress their friends? What's going on in this particular situation? It's dealing with proper communication skills. And again, listening and speaking to the juveniles, and working specifically to try to diffuse and de-escalate those types of encounters that we're having with our younger generations out here. Equity in policing for our block developing and understanding for the changing of the social and cultural demographics in North Carolina, identifying social and political climates that create tension between criminal justice professionals and the community, looking for the 6 dimensions of the diversity and how we can still provide equitable delivery of police services and to make sure it's equal across the board, looking at the impact of subcultures on interactions with the public, looking for trying to analyze and help develop community expectations, and then again, looking to enhance our ability to have people perceive that our services, our efforts are legitimate and truly in the pursuit of justice. Communication skills, again, I told you, we constantly have to have the communications information out there. So explaining exactly what that is, looking at those critical components, it's working with each other. If you've got a group of officers out there, one of the officers out of control, that other officer better be stepping up and saying, hey, I got this, you step back. It's the checks and balances. It's to make sure that we're protecting each other and protecting the public at the same time. That's the type of information that we would constantly be pushing out there as well. The state pushes out stuff like the leadership through the community partnerships. It's critical. I say that every time I go out in public. And again, if you remember, I said I misspoke, I think, whenever I first became chief. And a lot of times, that 16, 17 time period while we're having the skyrocketing crime, I will keep saying that the public isn't cooperating with us or refusing to give us information. And that actually wasn't true. After I realized what I was saying and what people were thinking, I had to change that to the victims aren't cooperating with us because the public has had a strong partnership. They want to keep their community safe. They are pushing to make sure that the trouble stays out because they got their own families to protect. And without that community partnership, we wouldn't be able to function. Our community partnership expands. We've got so many partnerships. I hate the COVID-19 pandemic came in. We had some very strong school programs that were ongoing where we had partnered with a couple of our elementary schools, just trying to have that interaction with those kids, trying to build up a relationship from the beginning. I've had to cancel our youth academy that we do through High Point, a partnership with High Point University, where we bring the youth in from all the different high schools and teach them that community, that civic aspect of leadership and support for one another. Our housing authority program, I've had to drop that because of the pandemic and because of our budgetary impacts right now. But the partnerships that we're able to achieve through that, working with the housing authority, so many hospitals and so many business partners, the Family Justice Center, HP Camp, all those groups coming together is how we were able to be successful. And we really have to emphasize that to the officers so they understand that relationship. They understand why we go to the Y to talk to the different ethnic groups up there to give them insight into police operations in High Point. We'll close up with a couple of troubling problems that, again, you tell me you don't remember this in January, I'm going to call you out on it. But I told you, I constantly need help recruiting. I need people driven to the police department who have a passion for the community, a passion for getting involved. This is North Carolina right now. This is a reduction of the number of people going off to basic law enforcement training, seeking employment in police departments across the state. 2013. Down to, this ended in
2016.
Yeah, 2016. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what my numbers went there. So 2013 to 2016. From 2016 to now, they've continued to go downhill. What this is this is the number of students out there in North Carolina that anytime a police department on the East Coast or the mountains or the Piedmont has an opening and they're applying for that job, this is our pool applicants that we're selecting. Now we have to be proactive. We actually hire people without the training and have to send them there to school. So we pay for them to go to the school, but our numbers are also increasing it to that 1,067 that happened back in 2016. So what's pushing them there? Our job pool is very limited right now. Let me hit this next slide. there are major detractors, and it's funny I'm having to say this, from being a law enforcement officer. You guys have seen what's going on TV right now. If you were a 21-year-old, a 22-year-old, if you're just finishing up college, how many of you are going to stand up and raise your hand and say, hey, it looks like the community needs me. Let me go be a law enforcement officer right now. And unfortunately, this has been going on for several years throughout our country right now. Some of the major issues that we continue to see that are preventing people from coming to the police department, drug use, debt, their general physical condition. I heard a presentation from a general in the military who said that the recruits now, they've had to learn how to train them differently because they are not physically active. Their bone density is so weak that they're breaking their bones out here trying to do PT. So first they have to come in and build them up to a certain level, because the exercise people get is using their thumbs in front of the video game screen at the TV. So everything's changed right now, but physical conditioning, we have a hard time getting people who can pass the physical fitness test. Generational preferences, paramilitary structures just aren't very inviting right now to a lot of these individuals. Police are a dying breed. Who wants to step up and be a police officer out in our community? Pay is just a generic challenge that's law enforcement across the world. How much should an officer earn to be out here pelted with bottles and rocks and bricks? I was watching the poor guys up in DC with the rocks and bricks thrown at them. We were out here at Leonard the other day, had bottles thrown at us. So you tell me, if your kids want to be law enforcement, where does that balance come in? Where does it trip over to say, yeah, that's enough money, I'm gonna go do that. And they're not out there. We still have people joining the military, and tell me the military is not dangerous. You're signing up to potentially risk your life for your country. We provide the training, we provide support, we provide equipment. We try training people to get through the career safely, but it's a constant challenge that we've got. So we continuously need your guys' help. I'm happy to get people that qualify through. I really want the diversity. I want people that are committed to the city of High Point. I can hire and bring people in from out of state on occasion. We do that. We get people in from some of our local colleges. I have no connections here. I really think policing changes if you have relationships here, if you have family here, and if you're policing to protect those that you love. That's the information I've got put together for you. I'll answer questions, but I do want to, Mayor, I'm prepared to talk a little bit about last night. If you want to hear some statistics and some data about what we encountered. First of all, don't know that everybody knows. So police departments, we have mutual aid with other law enforcement agencies. 115,000 folks here in High Point. I've got 255 positions for police officers. Sometimes that's not enough because they're not all working. So we've got to be able to reach out and help each other. On Saturday evening, the Greensboro Police Department contacted us. They've been standing out there being pelted and having the challenges from protesters, but also the ones that were getting off to the legal side of that. They've been on the ground for 15 to 17 hours. They had to have some relief because the groups didn't go home. We ended up sending a group deployment of officers over there. They got there maybe around 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, stayed until about 5 o'clock until things finally simmered down. They felt that their downtown structure was stabilized and it wasn't going to get destroyed on them before they came home. Then Sunday, we ended up with the situation where we had the group that started marching from South Main. Unfortunately, we had no communications with them. We formed barriers around them with our cars, trying to protect them, trying to warn all the motoring public about it, about their activities. They ended up growing maybe up to about 70 people, maybe a little bit more, walking, and then they started transitioning into cars, and we ended up with about 100 cars that ended up with this parade that went all the way around the city before they came to the police department. We dealt with that. They went to the courthouse. At the courthouse, I believe there's some messages that were put out, and then a lot of them dispersed. Those that did disperse came back to the police department. We dealt with them for a while. I'm appreciative. I had several of our council folks that came out there and really had helped a lot with the communications that was ongoing out there, helped with the messaging out there. And I think I'd be surprised if you guys didn't learn a little bit about what was happening as well. But again, we're able to eventually disperse those crew. Afterwards, after we got those guys dispersed from the police department, you all left. We ended up with a call down at the Walmart on South Main, where 40 to 50 individuals used pry bars, forced entry into the closed Walmart. Who closed because of the forming of the group down there. Went inside, grabbed merchandise and property, and fled. We ended up responding down there in force. Had people and cars fleeing everywhere from that location. We ended up clearing the building. I think we have one arrest, but we're working to see what type of other information we can use to identify who those individuals were.
Was there a number as far as property loss at the Walmart?
I don't have it yet. I've been so involved. I'm not looking at that specific report right now. ABC store on Wendover Avenue at the 4800 block got hit Sunday morning. I think as people probably coming back from Greensboro, they forced open a door or a window. 4 or 5 of them ran inside, grabbed a bunch of liquor and left. And then last night they did the same thing. They went back out there, shattered the glass. 4 or 5 of them went in, grabbed up a lot of alcohol and fled with it. Of course, everyone's wearing masks now, so our efforts are really handicapped to try identifying these guys. 131 West Commerce, the Softline showroom, had a door shattered with glass. Not sure if we had anything taken from there. 118 South Main Street, Tab Warrior Rugs had the window shattered. Penny Cafe and Crepe at 104 East MLK had the windows, the glass shattered there. I had a break-in to the Quick Cash Pawn Shop at 1300 South Main. Not sure if it's related to the group, but we still had a lot of that type of activity in the area, so I threw that down here. 1924 English Road at the English Road Grocery had a window pushed in. Don't know if it was peripheral from that group or not. The thing that really caused us the most concern though was the 100 block of Main Street, one of the showrooms up there. We ended up getting calls from this showroom on the bottom floor and this apartments above that. We got calls from the residents saying that the protesters who had taken up Main and High Street, they blocked it off with cars and people sitting. And unfortunately, we didn't find out about that until an ambulance trying to do CPR on an individual trying to get to the hospital contacted us and said they were stuck in the traffic and were having a hard time getting through to get to the hospital. But this group upstairs called and said they've broken into the showroom and they're coming in the apartment, we need help. They actually hadn't. They lit a Molotov cocktail and thrown it into the building where all these people lived. Luckily, it burned itself out. It didn't catch that building on fire. We had a couple of trash cans that were also caught on fire. That's where a lot of this glass was broken. We went down there in force. We put chemical munitions out, dispersed that crowd, and drove them off from there. So now we're watching to see where we go from here. And unfortunately, we've got it pretty easy right now compared to what I'm seeing across the country. And again, I really appreciate that voice of reason. We need the support. We need people to understand what our efforts are to partner with us. Need you all to help us figure out what we need to say to the community to make sure they understand. We don't condone those civil rights violations. We don't condone unfair justice. It's justice in its one type. And at the same time, I hold my officers accountable, but we need the citizens to hold up our officers and support them as they're doing their job out here as well.
I have a question, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
For High Point, but also you may know a little bit about maybe some of the other cities. What is the percentage or approximate percentage of total peaceful protesters and then the ones that start doing the rioting?
I don't know that number, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that's okay. I just wondered, because I know a lot of times in the news media, you see that on TV, but you know, they sometimes try to sensationalize different aspects. So there might be thousands of people here and then a handful of people actually, you know, causing the destruction.
I think a lot of it changes we saw a specific change after the sun went down. That's
Okay.
where our problems were. Once some of the community leaders left, the groups that stayed were the ones that were doing this. None of the community leaders were down at Walmart when 40, 50 people went into the building. So I think that's part of the dynamic. We've identified people from all around High Point. Obviously, a lot of High Pointers don't know if we are attracting people from out of the area. I know I've been reading bulletins from the government that's identifying all these groups that are coming in here. There's people whose intention it is to destroy what we have right now. And they're jumping onto this cause, and they're perverting it, and they're causing all these problems. And that is definitely not allowing the message that should be getting out there to get out there.
Yeah, no, I hate it. I wish that it would stop, and I support y'all in whatever you need to do to make it stop.
Chief, I want to take this opportunity not only to thank my fellow councilman for going out and meeting with the crowd yesterday and for helping you, but also I want to commend you personally for being willing to listen and for your restraint during a very difficult time. I've seen a lot of the social media posts and watched some of it live actually. And I want to personally commend you for your professionalism in dealing with that yesterday, and also the professionalism of your department as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. They're going through it. They're nervous. Their families are nervous. It's a tough time.
I understand.
And Chief, I love to say as well, thank you for today, for sharing everything that was shared. Thank you for yesterday. To your point about how we continue to communicate to our community so that they're keenly aware of where our law enforcement stands, I couldn't agree with that more. And I think what was resounding yesterday was when you came on the other side of the barrier, and what the community immediately felt was, okay, he's no longer putting himself over there, he's with us. And then the next thing that was huge was when it was asked very plainly in front of everyone, where do you stand on this? Very, very assuredly and very quickly, you denounced what happened so that you made it clear that, hey, that's not what we do. High Point Police does not support that, and we're willing to work with our community against that. And you know, I just hope that this continues to be something that as it fructifies, we'll continue to build better relationships between our community and law enforcement, and we'll continue to support one another and support the greater mission of making High Point the single most livable, safe, and prosperous community in America.
The safety of our community and the success of our community depends on it. Thank you.
Tears in my eyes, chill bumps. Thank you, Chief. You did an excellent job. Proud to be a High Pointer and proud to support High Point Police.
Thank you. Mayor?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Chief.
Sorry if I went long, and then you guys have some other meetings.
No, that was great.
That's fine.
I appreciate you.
We now need to have a motion to go into closed session for purposes of a property acquisition and for attorney-client privilege.
So moved.
Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion was made by Councilman Williams, seconded by Councilman Johnson. I'll call the roll going into closed session. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Moore, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Hudson? Councilman Hudson, how do you vote?
He may already be trying to log in.
Okay, well, Councilman Jones
Aye.
and Councilman Jefferson,
Aye.
and Mayor votes aye. We'll count Hudson as an aye since he's in the meeting. So that motion to go into closed session is approved by 9-0. So we are now in closed session, but we'll